a single ribbon along the backside of the island, I think it came through this commission, wouldn't it make sense to create a flood barrier to stop water from intruding into the interior of the island? Asked our engineers that question, and they said, you know what, it does make a lot of sense. So instead of just widening it, then the plan was to elevate it to an elevation of 6 feet above mean sea level. That plan was developed. We then had the December nor'easter that came to 7 feet. And it made us all kind of scratch our heads of, we could have just done this project, had this storm, and it would have been a foot overwhelmed. So could we go to 7 feet? Asked the engineers initially, and they say, no, you don't have the width. There's not enough area between the edge of the pavement and these private property owners' line. You only have about 15 feet to make this flood barrier, and it's too narrow to make 7 feet work. So they initially said, no, can't happen. Then days, weeks, months later, it comes to light that the golf course is going to completely shut down, completely renovate the golf course. That then led to the next question of, well, if they're going to shut that down and they have these wide swaths of land, does that solve this problem of not having enough real estate because you can kind of spread out on the golf course? Asked the engineers that question, they said, yes, that makes a difference. You could now get protection up to 7 feet, and you could put the protection on the correct side of those homes now as well. That was the other benefit of that, is you had houses on the intercoastal side of Waterway that you could put the barrier behind, so they would be on the good side of the protection. So that then became the plan. The golf course shut down. We have since that time we've been kind of trying to pull together permission from all of the adjacent property owners and the owners of the golf course to do this flood barrier project while they're shut down. We think we're very close to having that kind of all wrapped up and getting our nose in, just before the doors of opportunity close on us. So that first phase would be putting a barrier on the golf course. There then would be a second phase, which would happen out in the public right-of-way, so in the Waterway Boulevard right-of-way. Parts of that still have to come up to give that 7 feet of protection. That the path would get widened to just be a better path, and it does get all repaved. There's a FEMA grant in place to do that portion of the work. After those two phases are done, there are then a handful. You then have this kind of barrier along the back of the island, but you have about 3 low spots that are on private property that you have to work through. One of them happens to be the fire station. That's the bulk of it. But you would have this third phase that would work on private property to kind of plug those last remaining little holes. So what ends up, and when it gets built, it's going to be a very unimpressive ribbon of berm that's about this high. So not something that people will look at like the Battery downtown and think, right, oh my gosh, this is a engineering marvel, this berm. But it would have had the effect of, and if you look at the inundation maps that Thomas and Hutton created, and I think it's approaching 1,000 properties that it would have kept from having water up in and under their house in a storm like the nor'easter we had in December 23. So hugely impactful against those storms, but physically probably pretty unimpressive once it actually gets built.
Was money not just allocated an additional for redrawing some of that?
Yes, so council, there have been, and there are kind of a lot of touch points along the way. They've had to increase the engineering, the design. When it went from 6 to 7, that was more design work. We actually had the misfortune of coming to an agreement with the golf course contractor to do the work. They seem to be the obvious They're there, they're working. They gave us pricing, that pricing went through to council, that got approved. They then got to a point where they couldn't execute the work. I think they kind of bit off more they can chew with the golf course. So they reached out and they said, hey, we know we've kind of agreed to do this, but we need to pull out. So that's what's left us kind of scrambling here in the last few weeks, and we're out to bid now for that work. With any kind of luck, we will have bids back and considered by council at their meeting this month at the 26th to then get that work underway before the golf course
So this is a
reopens.
2-foot berm?
No.
At its highest, it's about 2 feet. And it's gonna be a straight, obviously, natural terrain is going, some parts are already naturally above 7, and you don't need a berm. But it's for those low parts, and they get down, the lowest sections are about 5 feet above sea level. So at its highest, it's 2 feet. And then the complex part about it is you have to have a series, and it's not really that complex, but you have to have a series of drainage pipes that allow the stormwater to run out, but don't allow the tidal water to inundate. So you have these one-way pipes that are throughout, yeah. So what's so simple somehow has become very
Yeah, it really
complex.
doesn't make sense that, I mean, his people are all out there still working on the course.
Yeah, they are very anxious about meeting a November 1 deadline for play. They
So
don't,
when they knocked off the water mains at 3 blocks,
yes,
Digging
yeah, we
the
heard
same
about that.
track.
Yep, we heard about that.
it was quite the feat.
Have all of the owners that are engaged in this signed the right-of-ways at this point? or-
We had one, we thought that we did have them all. There was an additional owner added because they're not adjacent, but they are nearby enough that the ownership wanted their release as well. So we had them all, we've had one more kind of added, and we're trying to get that one in place now.
So they have to do work on the golf course itself?
Yes. Yep. So a lot of it has been, done and starting to clean up, and we would go back through and, it shouldn't be a massive disruption, and we hope that we can get it put back and made pretty before the first golfers go
It's
through it.
amazing that all you need is a couple of feet to prevent
Yes.
that kind of drainage.
Well, and you think about, we heard in our office of tens, if not hundreds of cars totaled because,
Flooded,
but it would be, all the cars that got flooded were kind of lower and at these lower properties. And then into houses. So people with low cars, low houses, low lots, they got hammered pretty badly.
Well, interior, on the other side of the waterway, the interior side of waterway, you have properties that are,
Yeah.
Down
Much
below,
smaller.
below even.
so
Yeah,
once
kind
the
of,
water gets over that hump, then it just all goes to,
Yeah, I just can't imagine 2 feet of berm would help that kind of experience.
yeah, you're right. Waterway, there are bits where it crests over waterway, but then it goes down into fills basically a basin and can't get out, so.
Yeah, most everything runs up from waterway
Yeah.
to Cameron.
Yeah.
Cameron's kind of the old sand.
Yeah, there's kind of that low, Forest Trail, that basin's very low.
But there is a forest trail that had no water at all.
That's correct, yeah. Yeah, the inundation, it's fascinating to see, the inundation map shows every property below 7 that was inundated with the December nor'easter, and it's a ton of that area, but we heard that back from the community, and I will say, when we heard it back, they were so far away from the intercoastal, everybody's intuition is it's the drainage system isn't working quick enough. And when the research came back, it's like, that was not the drain, that was the intercoastal waterway into your house.
Well, there's no sewers back in that area,
There are,
are there?
yeah, they're low and that low, you just get occasionally get the intercoastal waterway into
Yeah.
the underside of your house. And there's nothing, a stormwater superhighway is not gonna,
See,
Save you from that.
Chicago's flat, I mean, it's just, the whole city's like this. So what everyone did is put sump pumps in. And then when everyone put them in, then it came into the guy who had the weakest pump, because people would get bigger and bigger
Couldn't
pumps.
keep up with
So you're
your
pumping
pump.
the water's coming out of the sewer instead of going in the sewers. It's pretty cool.
yeah, downtown is, I mean, downtown Charleston is
Yeah.
relying heavily on pumps and, we had kind of a decision to make about that and basically felt like pumps were too labor intensive, too expensive over, so we're trying to do it, and it's complicated to do it this way. We're trying to do it from stop valves and not pumps. Most folks do use some degree of pumps.
Well, they didn't work in New Orleans, so.
Yeah. Rich, I feel like you had a second. That was a long-winded answer to your first question.
You remember?
You remember I've talked long enough.
I think that's good enough. What's your real question?
That was
I'm
a,
happy.
you can tell what my day-to-day life is.
I can't believe Fozzie was gonna let you go up, after he's built all this, to go, you guys go in and put dirt all over it. That's pretty,
We were out there, Monday or Tuesday, and Mr. Fazio called.
senior or junior?
I don't know which, but that was like being called to the principal's
Oh,
office.
yeah. He's great. He's an incredible guy. Doing a beautiful job.
We have a motion to adjourn with no more
So
business.
moved.
Okay, Sandy makes a motion, we have a second?
Second.
Good job. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any